We got another crash out, man. This is crazy, man. We have to revisit a crash out, and we have legend, Hall of Famer Rebecca Lobo actually finally setting these ladies straight. You guys are turning people off.
Elle Duncan went on ESPN and dropped one of the most outrageous takes about Caitlin Clark and the WNBA, claiming that new fans were somehow draining the life out of the league. Fast forward a few months, with ratings plummeting and the WNBA teetering on the edge of a lockout, even Hall of Famer Rebecca Lobo is now calling out players in the media for alienating fans. Duncan's hot take, yeah, it didn't age well.
Fans are turning against you. They see all the things the WNBA been doing, like giving y'all housing, paying for y'all babies, giving y'all cars, all types of stuff. Y'all are losing the people. Rebecca Lobo sets the record straight. Okay.
All right, here's a question for you. Do media figures like Elle Duncan owe Caitlin Clark and her fans an apology for how they talked about them last season? Drop your thoughts below. We need to revisit one of the most cringe-worthy media moments from last WNBA season, an incident that has completely backfired and damaged the credibility of everyone involved. Elle Duncan, reporting for ESPN, made comments about Caitlin Clark and the influx of new WNBA fans that were so absurd, so completely disconnected from reality, that months later, people are still shaking their heads at how wrong she was. Here's the context. This took place at the height of Caitlin Clark mania, arguably the most attention the WNBA has ever seen. Games were selling out, TV ratings were skyrocketing, and major networks were dedicating serious coverage to women's basketball. For decades, the league had been chasing this level of spotlight, and then, in the middle of it all, Elle Duncan went on ESPN and declared that new fans were sucking the life out of the WNBA. Not adding energy, not bringing excitement, not rescuing the league from obscurity, sucking the life out of it. Those were literally her words.
The truth. You are right. You are right, new fans. There has never been more viewership because of Caitlin Clark. There's never been more attention. They're doing 40 minutes on First Take about Caitlin Clark. They never did that before.
Hey, and you know what? And you know what they're not doing now, Elle Duncan? They're not doing 40 minutes on the WNBA when Caitlin Clark wasn't playing. They weren't doing 40 minutes on Colin Cowherd when Caitlin Clark was hurt and wasn't playing. They're not doing 40 minutes on Unrivaled on Nick Wright. First things first. They're not doing 40 minutes on Unrivaled with all these other stars y'all claim. Everybody's a star. The Paige Beckers, the big stars. Why ain't First Take talking about them? Why ain't nobody talking about them?
Let's unpack just how ridiculous that statement was. For over 2 decades, the WNBA struggled to capture attention. National TV barely covered games. Arenas were half empty. The league was bleeding money year after year and relying on NBA subsidies just to stay afloat. That was the reality, until Caitlin Clark arrived. Once Clark was drafted, everything shifted. Fever. Games started drawing massive ratings. Arenas sold out wherever they played. ESPN and other networks were actually featuring WNBA games on their shows. Merchandise sales were booming. The entire league's business model began transforming because, finally, real fans were showing up and investing in the game. And what was Elle Duncan's reaction to this surge of growth? New fans are the problem. According to her, new fans were somehow sucking the life out of the league. That's one of the most backwards, self-sabotaging takes you could ever make about a sport finally gaining traction. It gets worse. Duncan wasn't alone. A wave of WNBA players, media figures, and longtime fans seemed genuinely upset that the league was becoming popular. They criticized new fans for not knowing the league's history. They resented Caitlin Clark for being the reason people were paying attention. In short, they resented success because it wasn't happening the way they imagined it. When someone pushed back on Duncan during that segment, pointing out that viewership had never been higher, and that shows like First Take were now running 40-minute segments on women's basketball when they never had before. Duncan just waved it off. She acted like all this attention was a problem, as if it came with strings attached, and somehow that was a bad thing.
That early in our pod today, you actually were quoted somewhere saying this is the first time you have zero fear around the league folding, right? Which I totally know what you mean. It's like in other negotiations, there was always not like it was actually gonna fold, but it was like, hey, we gotta figure this out. How are we gonna do this kind of a vibe? All right, so from your perspective, what should be like the high priorities for this agreement?
It's been interesting to kind of see how it has all evolved. And one of the things that strikes me is like the deal that, as you read it, that the owners have on the table for the players. And, I'm not privy to all of the information, but like, it looks like a pretty amazing deal. And that, like, if the players took the deal that's on the table right now, they should feel great about it, because it's huge salaries. It is a degree of revenue sharing. It's going to allow the owners to continue to invest in the product. I mean, having a practice facility, having all the things that Sue and I played all those years without. Like, my New York Liberty team practiced.
Here's the thing that Elle Duncan and others completely missed. Sports media covers what people actually want to watch. First Take wasn't running 40-minute segments on the WNBA before Caitlin Clark because no one was tuning in. It wasn't personal bias, it was simple business. Networks don't give primetime coverage to content that gets 0 ratings. Then Clark arrived, and suddenly WNBA games were drawing real audiences. Naturally, the media coverage ramped up. That's how it works in every sport. The NFL gets more coverage than the CFL because it has more viewers. The NBA gets more airtime than overseas leagues because its audience is bigger. It's not complicated. Yet Duncan and her peers acted like extensive media attention on Caitlin Clark was somehow unfair to other players or harmful to the league. They wanted the perks of popularity without acknowledging the source of it. They wanted the spotlight but refused to credit the star power driving it. Her comments about other storylines in the league before Clark, completely delusional. She insisted there were compelling narratives, competition, excitement, joy on the court, but if those storylines were so engaging, where were the viewers, the media coverage, the sold-out arenas? The truth is, they weren't connecting with a broader audience. That's not hate, it's just reality. The WNBA had players, games, and moments, sure, but it didn't have mainstream attention or financial viability. Fast forward to today, and the consequences of that hostile attitude toward new fans are crystal clear. The WNBA is facing a potential lockout because players and owners can't agree on a new collective bargaining deal. Ratings for initiatives like Unrivaled, the new 3-on-3 league, are tanking. Fans who were excited about women's basketball last season are tuning out, tired of being called racist or unwanted. That's where Rebecca Lobo enters the picture. Her comments are devastating for anyone who spent last season attacking Caitlin Clark and her fans. Lobo, a Hall of Famer with undeniable credibility, warned that players need to be careful with their words because public support is slipping. She highlighted that the owner's current offer is actually strong. Maximum salaries over $1 million, average pay around $500,000, revenue sharing and investments in facilities and infrastructure. By any reasonable measure, that's a big step forward for the league. Instead of recognizing that progress, some players called the offer a slap in the face and used combative, hostile language, instantly alienating fans who had been trying to support them. Lobo specifically called out that tone, saying players need to think about how they communicate during negotiations. It's wild. Players making hundreds of thousands or even over $1 million are turning away the very fans who helped fuel the league's recent growth. Lobo also noted the All-Star Game situation. Players wore "Pay Us What You Owe Us" shirts and initially had massive fan backing, but when the on-court product flopped, support evaporated. Fans realized they were being asked to cheer for players who weren't delivering on the court. Then there was Commissioner Kathy Engelbert getting booed for over a minute in Las Vegas, even before Nafisa Collier made her controversial comments about racism. Fans were already frustrated with how the league and its leadership had treated them. Lobo's point about public support shifting from players to owners is huge. Normally in labor disputes, fans side with players against billion-dollar owners. But this time, so many fans feel insulted, dismissed, and attacked that they're actually siding with management. That shows just how badly players and their supporters in the media have mishandled the situation.
This is crazy, man. The WNBA players are single-handedly turning each and every fan. They're just pushing fans away. There's no doubt.
Never been more viewership because of Caitlin Clark. There's never been more attention. They're doing 40 minutes on First Take about Caitlin Clark. They never did that before.
Hey, and you know what they're not doing now, Elle Duncan? They're not doing 40 minutes on the WNBA when Caitlin Clark wasn't playing. They weren't doing 40 minutes on Colin Cowherd when Caitlin Clark was hurt and wasn't playing. They're not doing 40 minutes on Unrivaled on Nick Wright, first things first. They're not doing 40 minutes on Unrivaled with all these other stars y'all claim. Everybody's a star. The Paige Beckers, the big stars. Why ain't First Take talking about them? Why ain't nobody talking?
It all comes back to the mindset Elle Duncan showed in that infamous clip. The idea that new fans were a problem instead of the lifeblood of the league. The resentment toward Caitlin Clark for being the reason the WNBA finally got attention. The hostility toward people who just wanted to watch great basketball and support women's sports. Think about it. Last season, Caitlin Clark brought fans back in droves. They bought tickets, tuned into games, picked up jerseys and merchandise. They were ready to be long-term supporters. And how were they treated? They were told they were racist. They were accused of only caring because Clark is white. Their enthusiasm was dismissed as conditional and worthless. Who sticks around after being treated like that? Why would anyone continue supporting a league where both players and media members openly resent your presence as a fan? You wouldn't. And that's exactly why viewership is dropping and public sentiment has swung so dramatically. Take Unrivaled, for example. The league pitched it as a must-watch off-season showcase for WNBA stars. Instead, ratings have been abysmal. Some games on TNT and True TV are drawing as few as 32,000 viewers, a national embarrassment. Why? Caitlin Clark isn't playing, and the fans who came to the sport because of her have no reason to tune in. As for the other stars that media voices like Duncan claimed were just as important, they can't pull an audience without Clark. That's not a knock on their talent, it's just reality. Star power drives viewership, revenue, and mainstream attention in every professional sport, and Caitlin Clark has it. Recognizing that doesn't diminish anyone else. It just acknowledges what makes fans show up. Even Nneka Ogwumike's push with Unrivaled to teach business is falling flat because TNT might pull out. The audience simply isn't there. This isn't a lesson in running a league. It's proof of why the WNBA needed Clark's star power to reach the mainstream. The media training problem is real too. Players keep stepping in front of cameras and microphones saying things that hurt their own cause. They don't understand how to communicate in ways that build support rather than alienate it. Lobo highlighted this by contrasting today's players with her own experience. Playing at Braley Middle School on a tiny court with the Liberty, today's players often lack perspective. The league has come a long way in salaries, facilities, and investment, but instead of acknowledging progress and pushing for more, some act like they're being exploited, even as they enjoy benefits earlier generations could only dream of. Fans are noticing housing, allowances, childcare support, travel accommodations. These perks make players' complaints feel less credible. Combine that with million-dollar max contracts and revenue-sharing offers on the table, and the rhetoric about being slapped in the face is falling flat. Negotiation transparency has turned public support away from players. Elle Duncan's comments perfectly captured the attitude now strangling the league. Resentment toward new fans, hostility toward Caitlin Clark, and refusal to recognize why the WNBA was finally growing. And now, it's coming back to haunt everyone involved. This was completely avoidable. If players and media had welcomed new fans, celebrated Clark's impact, and focused on building momentum, the WNBA would be in an incredible position today. Instead, the league faces a potential lockout and declining public support because it couldn't get out of its own way. Elle Duncan said new fans were sucking the life out of the WNBA, and now the league is barely breathing because those fans were pushed away. Rebecca Lobo is stepping in, calling for better communication, but the damage has already been done. If you're fed up with media nonsense and want the truth, hit that like button and subscribe for more reality checks.